So let's get started, and I'll begin by introducing myself. So good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Eleanor Power, and I am the Director of Marketing Communications for the Faculty of Open Learning and Career Development at Dalhousie. And it's great to see so many of you here with us this morning. I would like to begin by acknowledging that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. And I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on our certificate in Ergonomic Program Management. And I'll just offer a brief introduction of our speaker and host of today's webinar, David Chiasson. So David works for Ergonomic Systems Associates. ESA is Atlantic Canada's leading human performance consulting company specializing in ergonomics. David has over 18 years of experience helping corporations and government departments improve their performance. He's done this by helping companies identify design issues that lead to poor performance and injury, while working with them to develop and implement practical and effective solutions that improve the design, setup, and organization of work systems, spaces, equipment, and tasks. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Dave. And just one quick note for me is that I think this is an incredibly timely topic, given that people's workspaces are just so varied these days, with working from home, working hybrid, working in the office and home. So I think this is an incredibly timely topic. So David, over to you. Thanks so much.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for letting me talk about the program. Without further ado, let me bring up a short slideshow I've got just about the program. The program has been around for quite some time. It used to be a one-credit course you could take as part of the Occupational Health and Safety Management program going back to, gosh, the 80s, I guess. And it used to be taught by a colleague of mine, Sue Pettit. She handed the course over to my company, and it grew into this program, which is now online. So 100% of what I'm going to describe to you is online, which took me a while to wrap my head around 8 or 9 years ago when we started to make that transition, because a lot of what we do, well, everything we do in ergonomics is on site with people, with unions, with management, with worker representatives, with workers themselves. I mean, the human is central to the process of ergonomics. So with all 4 of these courses I do, I find myself after every offering of a course changing it slightly, or in some cases a lot, to try to create a better learning experience. And a lot of that revolves around, well, giving people a realistic opportunity to actually assess work using videotape footage. But anyway, I'll get to that in due course here. I don't think there's anything Mary Ellen touched on that I could really expand on, aside from the fact I went to Dalhousie. I am what they call a certified professional ergonomist. A lot of people don't know about our profession, and I won't bore you with the details, but basically we're a science-based profession that's been around for a while. It's regulated in Canada, it's regulated in the United States, it's regulated internationally, but it's not a licensed profession, okay? So to become a CPE, you basically do an undergrad and a grad degree in ergonomics, or you, back when I was going through school 100 years ago, there wasn't a program in ergonomics at Dalhousie, so I was doing a bunch of courses in kinesiology at the graduate and undergrad level, and then in the industrial engineering department at what was the Technical University of Nova Scotia back then. But look, suffice it to say, if you take this program, you're going to get instruction from somebody who's made every mistake imaginable, probably 3 times over in those 25 years of experience. So, you know, you can leverage those mistakes and create a good learning experience for yourself, I'd like to think. So a little bit about the program. Shouldn't be any surprise here. The goal of the program ultimately is to guide you through the process of designing an ergonomics program. Now, look, in Canada, we have, whether you know this or not, we do have a standard that was reaffirmed in 2017 by the Canadian Standards Association called Workplace Ergonomics and Management and Implementation Standard. It's a great roadmap that meshes with another standard they have in occupational health and safety management. So look, I like to think of it as there's two people that the program is targeted towards, or at least I like to think the program helps. The obvious one would be OH&S professionals working for corporations and governments who are looking at incorporating an ergonomics process into their occupational health and safety management system. I mean, that makes up, I've never done the stats, but certainly more than half of the people that take the course. The rest of the folks that take it are usually like me, they're consultants. They might have their own practice, and that practice might be solely ergonomics based, or it might be someone who's working in healthcare, like a chiropractor, an occupational therapist, a kinesiologist, a physiotherapist, or an occupational health and safety consultant, and they just want to provide a more complete service to their customers. And by doing so, it also expands their market. So, quite a few people take the course who fall into that category too. So a little bit about the learning objectives where the course is concerned. And these first 2 points just dovetail to what I said previously about people that take the course. Now, look, to do those things, you're going to have to get pretty competent at identifying hazards and risk factors in the workplace that put employees at a risk of hurting themselves while developing solutions to reduce that risk. And for 3 of the 4 courses, that's what we spend a good deal of time doing, a lot of repetitions with doing that and getting feedback about it. We also get into a full day it's more like a day and a half of cost justifying initiatives to management. So where I stumbled a lot for about the first 5 or 6 years of my career was trying to convince people that there were risk factors in the workplace that put people that affected people's health and safety. While people didn't have a hard time believing that, it was the response was, so what's the cost of me doing nothing about it versus doing something? So to sell your ideas to a workplace health and safety management system, in my personal opinion, you have to be able to cost justify them. So I ended up taking a 3 or 4 day course a long time ago from an engineering company based in the United States on cost justifying ergonomics initiatives. So I try to incorporate some of what I've learned in my career and through that course many years ago into this course. Which I'm by no means an accountant, even though I run my own business. I defer to an accountant for taxes and things like that. But for about the last 15 years, I've been very conscious of cost justifying every initiative I try to convince my customers to make. And how successful a program is going to be is weighted very heavily, in my personal opinion, to one's ability to do that. One other learning objective, to leave you with the skills to be able to assess the effectiveness of any interventions to improve basically your company's bottom line or your customer's bottom line. And part of that is cost justifying ergonomics initiatives. So recognizing where the hidden costs are within any workplace system, not the obvious ones like workers' compensation board experience ratings and what companies pay per $100, but looking at things like absenteeism, overtime training, A delta T, inefficient processes, things of that nature. If you take the course, how are you going to get a benefit? Well, you're going to gain some practice using some basic hazard identification tools and then some advanced hazard identification tools, which I'll get into in a couple of slides from now. You're going to actually be able to identify some areas within your workplace or your customer's workplace where there's going to be some room for organizational improvement. You're going to learn about a lot of interventions to eliminate or control risk in the workplace, and that's risk of injury. You'll learn about some strategies for establishing a decent infrastructure from which an ergonomics program should function. You also develop some strategies for involving management, union supervisors, and employees in such a program. And lastly, back to this cost benefit information, you'll learn about facilitating the interpretation and communication of that to the appropriate decision makers. So a little bit about the training approach. Look, there's 4 distinct courses. Each one lasts 4 weeks. The Ergonomics Program Design and Integration, it's the building block for the other 3 programs in the program. The next one in line is Ergonomics in the Workplace, then Office Ergonomics and Workplace Design, and finally Industrial Ergonomics and Workplace Design. I'll break each of those down for you, starting with the next slide, not in too much detail. In each of these 4 weeks, I'm basically going through a bunch of things similar to what a university course would do. So with each week, there's multimedia presentations I put together, combine that with some textbook readings, related quizzes and tests. Then usually in week 2 of each course, there'll be some hazard identification checklists and advanced assessment tools, where you'll be given some case studies and some examples of the tools being used. And then you'll be required, of course, to use the tools on your own and get some feedback from me about how you're doing with it. There's also a good deal of work-related videotape information that I share in the course. Within the confines of the course, obviously, where you're actually assessing videotape, doing some problem-solving activities, coming up with some actions to control the risks that are found, and talking about ways to actually measure whether they're effective or not. With every course, there's sometimes weekly assignments, sometimes it's just all tests after a specific reading, and then a final project at the end of each course. So even after the course, with some of my students, they keep in touch with me and get me to review some things they're doing as they're getting comfortable in the first maybe year or 2 after they've taken the program. They'll give me or look for feedback about things, preparing to do assessments after they've done an assessment. What have they found? I've been doing that for a while, mostly because the course numbers are manageable that way. If the course gets too big, maybe the time I can allocate to following up with students after the program's over might be more limited. But anyway, I'm pleased to see that a lot of the students that take the course keep in touch and look for assistance as they get comfortable putting into place what they've learned. So I'm going to run through each of the 4 courses, and yeah, and if you have any questions along the way, by all means, you can ask at the end.
And can I actually jump in with a question, David?
Sure, you can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious, from your experience, do you find that there's a real skew toward people taking the certificate who want to open up their own practice, or are these people who, who are in an existing role? I'm just trying to, I suppose, get a sense of what people's interests have been historically in the certificate.
Well, I'd say the current, I think the current enrollment in the course is a good statistical example of what percentages you'll see. So right now, the people taking this course, or pardon me, taking the program, 25% of them are in private practice, and they're looking to expand on their tool set, or expand their toolbox and provide additional services to their customers.
Right.
In some cases, they're just starting to do assessments out in the field, and they want to be accurate and up to date. Everyone else is they are some part of an occupational health and safety management system. They're either the lead, or they're a member.
Okay.
And I mean, in some situations with this course, I mean, we've actually offered it through Dow exclusively to, one customer, a corporate customer. That's happened, a handful of times in the last, 20 years. So you get that too. And in that case, it's, we're offering it to a health and safety committee. So a group of people that are employee representatives, front office representatives, procurement representatives. But generally it's just one or two people from an organization who fit into one of those categories taking the course. They're part of, for the most part, they're part of a health and safety management system.
And sorry, just one follow-up question that I have, and it actually relates to what you'll be covering in terms of the courses. Do you touch on just the added complexities of, or perhaps there aren't any, and I'm just being, I'm just not aware of the industry, but I might expect that doing a lot of work virtually, connecting with clients, might be challenging in kind of ergonomic program design, integration, implementation. Do the courses kind of touch on the fact that so much of maybe that client interaction is online?
For some of it, yes. For the pure assessment part of this, yeah. And that's, entirely because I guess everything that we're assessing, from a hazard identification, root cause identification, control, implementation. It's all done virtually anyway with this course. So people are getting reps doing that. With the last course we did on industrial ergonomics and workplace design, we actually looked at some platforms that are out there that people were interested in learning more about, that basically artificial intelligence to potentially allow people to do assessments more remotely.
Right.
We didn't actually use one in the program, but I just gave them my personal experience with 3 and where they're beneficial and where they have room for improvement.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Sorry. Just wanted to jump in with a few questions. But would love to hear more about the courses. So I'll step back, and then like Dave said, if anyone has questions, please feel free to add them in the chat and we'll cover them at the end. Thanks.
You're welcome. I just don't want to miss these questions. Sometimes I have a habit of just talking and not looking in the right place to see if someone's raising a hand or asking a question. So I'll try to be vigilant here. I'll give you a little bit about the ergonomic program design and integration course. That's the traditionally we've done this. This has been the last of the 4 courses one would take. We have an ergonomics in the workplace course, which comes up after this one that I'll talk about in a minute. But the more I think about this program and the CSA's standard for workplace ergonomics and management and implementation standard, I'm almost thinking this should be the first course in the group. But anyway, this course dovetails directly with what the CSA has in their standard on workplace ergonomics. They base it around the elements of an occupational health and safety management system, and they embed the ergonomics process within it. So they're talking about the plan, do, check, act system within OHSMS. So, in this course we cover, why commitment, leadership, and participation in the planning stage is really important, and how to strategies you can use to gain commitment, identify leaders and help with improving employee participation. We touch on, legal and other requirements out there that might be driving the program, as well as objectives and targets a program might have. We try to tie that back into looking for areas to save companies money. We go from that planning stage to implementing ergonomics into a health and safety management system, and then implementing ergonomics into design projects too. But just to list a few bullets here, with respect to economics and ergonomics, two words that look the same but sound completely different, but they go together. So there's two parts we look at where meeting objectives and targets and evaluating an ergonomics process is concerned, where money is an object, which is justifying the process itself and then justifying an ergonomics program. So, spilling from that, we get into implementing ergonomics within health and safety under the do section of the plan, do, check, act process, where we're just going through the process of identifying hazards, doing risk assessments, identifying root causes, implementing controls to eliminate or control risk, monitoring, following up, and then looking at the application of ergonomics within design, where we're planning and anticipating, getting into detailed designs, et cetera, et cetera. I'll expand on that with the next two of the next three courses I talk about. Then we get into evaluating the process, looking at continual improvement from a management perspective. And then we give some examples of sample programs in large industries and small industries. So that provides a pretty good springboard into the next three courses, more specifically where the implementation phase of the ergonomics process is concerned. So, the next course is ergonomics in the workplace. And I like to think of it as basic assessment and problem solving. So if any of you are familiar with, see if someone has a question for me. So if someone has a question here, over the past 20 years, have I noticed it's become easier to make the economic benefit argument? For me, it has, just as I've become more comfortable asking the right questions of some of my customers during the first part of a project where I know what to ask, or I know what information to ask for to start, building a case for any control measures that have to be put in place down the road so I can cost justify them. But in terms of customers being willing to spend money, not necessarily. My experience has been in the last 20 years that it's all pretty much dependent upon my ability to uncover hidden costs of health and safety with the assistance of my customers. So yeah, I like to think about this intro course as basic assessment and problem solving. It's, if any of you are familiar with Ontario's MSD prevention strategy, musculoskeletal disorder prevention strategy, they have a really good toolkit system there, both basic and advanced. But the course kind of follows their lead, and also Nova Scotia's lead. Nova Scotia did the same thing about 10 to 12 years ago with their musculoskeletal disorder prevention strategy as well. So, where this course is concerned, we get into a few different topics on the do end of things. We dive quite deeply into the musculoskeletal system. I mean, to understand, to help students understand where risk arises from in a workplace setting where employees are completing tasks, duties, and jobs, you have to have a pretty good handle on the musculoskeletal system. So we get into skeletal muscle physiology, physiological aspects of muscle. I mean, stuff I would have covered in an introductory course in kinesiology in my first year university. And then from there, we get into musculoskeletal disorders, how they develop, what are some of the risk factors associated with them. We also touch on how our body's response to work is differently, versus, me sitting at a computer versus me working in a warehouse and handling a lot of heavy items versus working on an assembly line and using my upper body to put a piece of a part together. So we look at different work and how it affects people's bodies and what's good and what's not so good. We also get into organizational design and cognition as well. So we're really focused in this course, once we build a kind of baseline in the first week and a half about the human body, how it likes to work and how it doesn't like to work and what can contribute to injury. Then we start getting into looking for hazards and their root causes. So to take that a step further, within health and safety and the application of ergonomics, we start running down this little decision tree here where we're looking at identifying hazards and reviewing injuries and reports, which would mean doing exactly that, looking for lagging indicators in a customer or in a person's organization, things like high injury rates, complaints from workers, which you might find through workplace surveys. So we look at some workplace surveys we can use to help uncover where hazardous situations may be existing. From there, we get into human anthropometry. So it's just a study of what makes us look the way we do, and how that can, be it gender, race, body parts, putting them all together, and age as well, putting it all together and looking at how workplaces fit some people well and don't fit other people well. Another part of anthropometry is strength-related information. So we cover off quite a bit on strength. Things like reaches, working in three-dimensional spaces. So, oftentimes when technology is not built around somebody, they tend to contort their body to deal with the technology or contort their mind. I mean, we're pretty adaptive that way, but over time it can lead to errors, mistakes, damage, and then, strange postures that people have to work in that put them in risk of getting hurt. So we spend a bit of time with human anthropometry. We spend some time doing task analysis and talking about worker participation. And then we get into the step 2 of this process, which is doing actual assessments. So in this ergonomics in the workplace course, there are some checklists we incorporate, both for office-based work and industrial-based work, be it industrial work that's manual materials handling based or upper body movement, traditional, think of assembly line based movement. We have some checklists we introduce to help people identify hazards based on everything that they're seeing. We also incorporate some workplace surveys and then some problem solving, root cause and solution worksheets where, the premise is you get together as a group, i.e. a committee, and you try to come up with an agreement on what the root cause of the hazard you've identified is. And if you can do that, then you move along to the solution development process. And again, as a group, we try to arrive at agreement on what the solution to the root cause of the hazard we've identified is. And then we get into workstation design, looking at different solutions for different scenarios, while monitoring and following up. And what we don't really get into is in this course is, what happens if, we can't come to an agreement on a hazard that's present. Now think about this from a committee point of view in a large company or a somewhat smaller company or a government agency or department. Agreement can't be made on what a particular hazard is or the root cause of a hazard or on a solution. Or, management might say, well, we don't have enough money to deal with, what you're telling us. That's basically where we stop. And that's where the next 2 courses come in, where we, talk more about awareness, training, worker participation, communication, and then gathering more information, the information we need to do a more in-depth deep dive into what we're seeing and hearing about, and then assessing it using some more advanced tools and some solutions. So let's take that a step further and talk briefly about the Office Ergonomics and Workplace Design course. So in the last 10 years, I've probably spent 70 to 75% of my practice in office environments. And the last 2 years has been, that's been equally true because more people are working at home. And I mean, look, this is an advanced assessment and problem solving course, okay? And, you know, there's something that helps. In my line of work, you're only as good as the scientific information that's out there for you to reference, okay? So anytime I'm doing an assessment, I'm always looking for national or international standard scientific standards that I can use to help me find some clues to steer me towards what's hazardous in the workplace versus what's not hazardous. In an office environment, we've got this scientific standard that the CSA put out back in 2017. And it's designed to target corporate offices. WFH, working for home is what the acronym means, or working in a car, or a combination of all three. So, I mean, this is how I approach this course. You know, it's drawing on that standard to create the curriculum for the course, and also creating a very specific tool we can use to look at risk. So, you know, my company many years ago, back when the standard was just a guideline, we created and then updated this in-depth assessment tool that allows anyone who gets some reps at using it and some feedback about using it appropriately. It gives you a pretty succinct and easy to use system to look at about 8 different variables in the workplace, you know, which also is through the eyes of this CSA standard, to score each of those variables. So, you know, chairs, works, keyboard and mouse locations, monitors, lighting, and a whole slew of others. You know, to look at each of them, look for specific hazards, to score each variable, and then create an overall score for a person's individual workstation or a group of workstations in a department. It will also help you prioritize areas where you need to assign change, first, second, third, fourth. And then, of course, we go through a whole lot on products and solutions and what to avoid thinking about using, you know, what really works and when to actually use it. So the second part of that is the application of ergonomics in design. So let me give you an example here, down in the lower right-hand corner where I'm talking about the elements of design and where ergonomics can be applied. So let's take in an office environment, let's take one of my customers who I will not name, but currently they've decided to move 100% to offer their employees the ability to work from home. So they want to decide, all right, what does someone need at home? What's the first priority we should be looking for? My advice to them was chairs. So look, they want to buy a chair. So it's planning and anticipating. What is someone going to need? What are my workers going to need from home? How much is it going to cost us? What should we purchase first, second, third, fourth? What can people do at home on their own using what they might have available to them in their house, be it banker's boxes, cushions, kitchen cabinets, islands, countertops, kitchen tables, et cetera, et cetera. But it's planning and anticipating for where you're going to work and what the problems are going to be. Then coming up with, you know, in the case of this course, in a situation like this, it's, you know, giving participants a complete list of, well, it's basically a chair assessment tool. If you're tendering for a chair or looking for a specific chair, here's 2 pages of the variables you need to ensure the manufacturer is putting in their chair along with the stamp of approval, to get a list of chairs back from a bunch of vendors and decide upon which is the best one, you know, versus the detailed design stage, which includes procurement and cost justifying that, let's say over a 10-year period, to determine which chair is going to be, you know, give you the lowest total cost of ownership, let's say over a life cycle of a product. Then getting into installation and training, you know, getting the chairs into people's home offices, teaching them remotely or on site how to actually use the product, and then getting into regular operation and maintenance of what the person is using with respect to a chair. And then what happens at the end of a chair's life cycle for decommissioning and disposal. I mean, it could be a single product like a chair or a mouse, or it could be, you know, a complete new 4,000 square foot piece of space that a company wants to design for 100 workers. But we look at that the elements of design and where ergonomics can be a benefit. And that's that course in a nutshell. I mean, look, I didn't try to incorporate any video in this little overview of the program today because I was a little concerned if I started throwing video out there, I might get lost or it might not work well. But in that office ergonomics course, there's lots of videotape information we get into and imagery. Right down to we get right down to me providing, videotape instruction on how to do 9 different anthropometric measurements in an office workspace, which also spills into the industrial workplace too. Question here before I get into this last course?
No, I was just curious. I just wanted to touch base with everyone. I did add some details about the certificate and the link to where you can find out more, but so just wanted to jump in and mention that for those who haven't visited the chat. I've added in those details. So Dave, over to you for the last overview of the course.
All right, this last one will go quick because it's very similar to the office one, just a different workplace. The shop floor, for lack of a better word. So industrial ergonomics and workplace design. So it's just dealing with every workplace that does not look like an office. So manufacturing facilities, manufacturing facilities mostly. I've worked with, over 200 different private corporations in my career that manufacture everything from fishing gear to aerospace parts. I've worked with a whole bunch of different companies in the food service industry that create milk and milk products. I've worked with companies like Michelin, Pratt & Whitney Canada. So, those types of organizations, the whole idea being identify risk, get rid of it or control it, follow up, educate, measure, and cycle back through. So in this course, we also get into advanced assessment and problem solving. So it's just a building on top of the ergonomics in the workplace course, using the same system. We take anthropometry in this course and go into a more deeper detail about how to apply it for things like not computer workstations, but very similar to that, assembly line workstations. We get into a bit more in biomechanics, so muscle use, forces required to lift, lower, push, pull, or assemble items. We get into a bit more detail on doing task analysis, so just breaking down, basically describing what we're seeing a person do with their input. And then we get into some in-depth assessment tools, some valid and reliable tools, some of which appear in some provinces' occupational health and safety management acts. So one is the Association for Government, the ACGIH TLVs for lifting, the American Conference of Government Industrial Hygienists Threshold Limit Values for lifting. That's a tool we learn to use. The ACGIH TLV for hand activity is another tool we use in this course, as well as the revised NIOSH lifting equation, the rapid upper limb assessment survey tool, the rapid entire body assessment tool. There's another one here I didn't put down, but it should be there as well, and that's the Liberty Mutual tables for manual materials handling. So that's a well-known tool in health and safety and ergonomics for assessing pushes, pulls, lifts, lowers, and carries. And of course, we get into products and solutions. So very similar to the office course in terms of structure, but what we cover is completely different, with the exception of anthropometry and biomechanics. So different tools for different work. So the idea is give everyone some repetitions using the tools, give them some examples of the tools being used, come up with solutions as a group, talk about how we'd implement them, measure the results, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all I have to say about the program from a formal presentation point of view. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
There's a question here from Lori. David, do you have experience in ergonomics as it relates to farming operations?
That's a good question. No, I don't. On the office end of things, I do, but not in the actual field, I guess, literally.
Okay. And just a question from Sue. Hi, David. Just wondering if this certificate program is recognized by the CCCPE. Great to see you offering these valuable courses through DAL.
CCCPE, that's a good question. I haven't talked directly to the CCCPE about it. I can tell you this, I know, like for instance, if you were doing, so I mean, each of these courses has a continuing educational unit associated with it. I know, now I'll say this, like I said, I haven't talked directly to the Canadian College for Certification in the Professional Ergonomics, but I know quite a few students have gone through this course and were using the actual credits as part of their application for the CCCPE. Myself, I'm not certified, I'm not a certified Canadian professional ergonomist as certified by the Board of Certification in Canada. I'm a certified professional ergonomist from the BCPE. That's the Board of Certification of Professional Ergonomists in the United States, which is recognized internationally because it's got a slightly more stringent application process where you have to sit and write an 8-hour exam after you've passed all the university courses and et cetera, et cetera. But I know every 5 years when I have to reapply to the BCPE and use continuing educational credits to do so, they recognize these credits from Dalhousie as being, they recognize them. So, I mean, if the BCPE recognizes them, which has been doing this a whole lot longer than Canada has. And Canada has basically taken the BCPE model for education and adopted it. They just don't have an exam you have to sit and write. They basically have a group of people that review applications. I don't know how many times a year. I'd be shocked if they didn't recognize these credits from Dalhousie. I wouldn't be shocked, I'd be surprised. Shock's a little strong.
And yeah, Ethany, thanks Ethany very much. She's indicating here she's the program director of which the certificate falls under with the faculty. And she's just indicating that we can follow up to find out. And Sue's just acknowledging that she agrees the BCPE is far more widely recognized. Any other questions here for David before we officially wrap up? I'll just pause here for a minute. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through. And so I'll just take these final moments to share that recording of today's webinar will be arriving in your inboxes later today, along with a link to the certificate and other details. Will encourage you to fill out a survey to let us know your thoughts on today's webinar, and you can be entered to win a monthly draw of $100 toward learning with the faculty. So we would encourage you to fill out that survey. And if you have any other questions, you can certainly reach out to us. You can reach out to David. We'd be happy to answer your questions. So thank you so much, David, for hosting today's webinar. And we're getting some other thank yous from Sue, which is lovely. Thanks, Sue. And that will wrap us up officially. So thanks again, David. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
And have a wonderful, wonderful day, everyone. And take care and stay safe.
See you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.